Welcome to True Wellness with Dr. D, the podcast where we explore what it takes to live with vitality, balance, and purpose. I am Dr. D, and each week I'll bring you powerful tools, inspiring stories, and expert insights to help you thrive in every area of your life. From health and wellness to mindset and navigating life's challenges, this podcast is your guide to creating a life of true well-being. Be sure to check the show notes and grab your free copy of the True Wellness Checklist so you can get started on your journey to true wellness right away. Now, let's get started. Hello, everybody. Let me ask you a question. What if everything you desire, confidence, clarity, peace, was just 90 seconds away? And in today's interview here, I am joined by Dr. Joan Rosenberg, the brilliant Dr. Joan Rosenberg, a psychologist and best-selling author whose groundbreaking work reveals that your emotional freedom doesn't require years of therapy. In fact, it requires 90 seconds of courage. So she's here to flip the script on what we've been taught about pain, discomfort, resilience, and show you how leaning into just eight core emotions can unlock a life that you truly love. So if you've ever felt hijacked by your feelings or stuck in the same emotional loop, this episode is your reset. So welcome, Dr. Joan Rosenberg. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you. And thank you for your continual chase.
Yes. It's so important to have your message shared because, I've got your book right here next to me, and we send this book to so many of our clients. We recommend it left and right because it is really foundational. I think if anybody wants to live a life that they're truly present and joyful and happy, and that's such a missing piece today. So I'm so glad. For all of you who are listening, just to give you some background here, Dr. Joan Rosenberg, she is a cutting edge psychologist, like I said, a best-selling author, a renowned speaker, and she's known for her life-changing method, which is called the Rosenberg Reset. And with over 40 years of clinical experience, she helps people build emotional strength, confidence, resilience. And it's just doing that in a 190-second wave at a time. Her TEDx talk, her book, 90 Seconds to a Life You Love, and appearances on major media have helped thousands transform their relationship with their emotions and take back control of their life. So this is where we're going today, Dr. Joan, and I cannot wait.
Awesome. Well, I will follow your lead. Go for it.
Well, okay. So first of all, 90 seconds to a life we love. Most people are like, 90 seconds to a life I love. How is that even feasible, right? We've got all these things that are going on in our lives, all these distractions, all these upsets. We all come with our own baggage and trauma. How did you get to a place where that could be changed in 90 seconds?
Well, let me back it up a little bit before I came to the 90 seconds, because the 90 seconds I will always attribute to Dr. Joe Bolte Taylor.
Okay.
So for me, it was recognizing that I was recognizing certain patterns in the way people were leading their lives,
okay,
or not leading their lives and feeling like their lives were leading them. And the first part of it had to do with recognizing people who were, if you will, leaning into avoidance and letting avoidance be their avoidance and delay and disconnect and distract be their primary mode of operating in the world, as opposed to those who leaned into awareness. Yes. and let their level of awareness and more conscious choices or more conscious decision making be part of what they were doing. So the first was to notice the pattern between awareness and avoidance. Then the second for me was being aware that as much as our thinking could get in the way, or the certain thoughts that we held could get in the way, or beliefs or attitudes, that what I found is that people's difficulty or one's difficulty with unpleasant feelings seemed to get in the way more. And what I consistently found, and to your point, were that there were roughly 8 unpleasant feelings that consistently came up, and those were the ones that I identified. And then it was the 90 seconds. So what I was trying to do as a psychologist was to ultimately was to help people lean into these unpleasant feelings, but they had to choose into awareness as opposed to anything that led to avoidance and distraction.
Yes.
And then be aware that they had to notice which of the 8 or as many of the 8 kind of got in the way, so that they could start to, what I would call at that point, was to ride the wave. But what I wasn't understanding completely is what it is that I was asking them to ride the wave of. In
Okay.
my mind, it was unpleasant feeling. It turns out it was bodily sensation. And then it was the thing that would help them lean into that unpleasant bodily sensation the most, that had to do with the feelings, was finding out that it would only last 90 seconds.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And it goes, we always talk about how the body stores trauma. So, if we're just suppressing, then it stays stuck within us.
Right, right, right,
The body keeps score. That's another good book, right?
right. Yeah.
Let's talk about these 8 emotions. So, what are those 8 emotions and why are there only 8?
Well, a couple things around this. Think about when, if you were to describe that you got hurt by something,
Mm-hmm.
or someone hurt you, or the whatever. Think
Yes.
about the kind of feelings you would describe: sadness, maybe embarrassment,
Mm-hmm. Disappointment.
disappointment, anger, right? Frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's what, 4 or 5 already,
Yes.
right? People don't like to feel vulnerable, so that was another one,
Oh, that's a big one. Mm-hmm.
right? Shame is another one.
Yes.
So what I was listening for were the ones that were the most commonly felt. So it's think of the ones that I've chosen, and I'll go over all 8 again. The ones that I've chosen are what I would call the most common spontaneous reactions that we have to things not turning out the way we want, or the way we believe they need to turn out. So what are they? They're sadness, shame, helplessness,
Mm-hmm.
anger,
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability, embarrassment, disappointment, and frustration.
Yes.
Those are the 8. And again, because they're the most common everyday feelings that come up.
Okay.
So,
Now,
yeah, I mean, just think of anybody, again, at this idea of getting hurt, that's typically what it looks like.
yeah, eventually it all kind of boils down to those different emotions, doesn't it?
Yep. Yep.
And what would you say happens to most of us when those emotion comes up, right? What are we like as human beings, what do you see as that normal typical human response?
Well, again, somebody's either we only have 2 ways to go. We can either avoid, or we can be aware.
Yes.
Right? So, by and large, people probably avoid.
Mm-hmm.
And so what does that look like? And so anything that involves avoidance and distraction or disconnection, it could be people using substances, it could be people using food, it
Mm-hmm.
could be shopping, it could be sex or porn addiction, it could be having feelings about having feelings. It could be, there's, I think, identified like 35 different ways that people will disconnect or distract. Some
Yeah.
of the ones I just named are the biggest ones,
Mm-hmm.
but that, so that people will do that, and simply avoid. But the challenge is, it just leads to a pathway, in my mind, that ultimately decreases confidence, increases vulnerability, increases a sense of helplessness,
Mm-hmm.
and less control, and then ultimately anxiety and things much worse. That in the book I reference as, if they keep on doing it and it happens probably over years, then it leads to what I call soulful depression.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a spiraling vortex, right? The more
Yeah.
it's the old saying, it's like what you resist persists. And I'll
Yes.
probably
Yep.
add on and gets worse, right?
Yeah. Yes. Definitely.
So, but you talk about how it's 90 seconds of like this intensive emotion and feeling it in your body, but so many people are like, well, hold on a second. Sometimes it feels like hours, days, or years. Wait, what's happening?
What's the deal? So let me deal with the premise of the 90 seconds so that people fully understand that first. So understand that what I was trying to one of the questions I was trying to address as I kind of began my career ultimately was to understand what made it so difficult for people to deal with unpleasant feelings.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until the neuroscience research came out, especially in the early 2000s, that because more and more was being written at that time, that that I was able to kind of piece things together.
Hmm.
And I was always telling people to ride the wave, ride the wave, ride the wave. And what I thought I was telling them to do was to ride the wave of the feelings that they were feeling.
Yes.
But it wasn't again until that neuroscience research came out that I was to understand more fully. And again, if you'll let me walk through a couple pieces here, that it was to understand that we're one interconnected whole,
Yes.
meaning that the brain is always feeding information to the body, and the body is always feeding information to the brain.
Absolutely.
So that's the first thing to keep in mind. The second is to understand that when any of us feel, most of us come to know what we're feeling emotionally through bodily sensation. So,
Right.
for instance, if I were embarrassed, you would probably see my face turn red, and that would be a signal to you that I was maybe embarrassed. But I would be feeling the heat in my face from that blood rushing to my face, and
Yes.
that heat in my face would be my signal of my bodily sensation for embarrassment. And or we can think about I have, it's a client that when she gets angry, her arms get hot. When another one that when she gets angry, she feels like the hair on the back of her neck stands up.
Sure.
Or somebody else with a tight jaw. So those are all bodily signals, if you will, or
Yes.
bodily sensations. So what I began to understand is that in order for people to kind of ride the wave of feeling, they had to ride bodily sensations.
Mm.
And then Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, who wrote a book called My Stroke of Insight, wrote in that book and described how when a feeling gets fired, there's a rush of biochemicals into the bloodstream that activate the bodily sensations I'm talking about.
Yes.
And that those same biochemicals rush out of the bloodstream, or I'm sorry, flush out of the bloodstream. So we have a rush into the bloodstream and then a flush out of the bloodstream in roughly an upper limit of 90 seconds. So then what I was able to do is to turn to clients and say, look, we're talking about riding one or more waves of bodily sensations
Hmm.
of the feeling basically that you're experiencing.
Yeah.
So that was that. So how does it work? We have, think of it as the emotional equivalent of a stub toe. When we stub our toe or we hit our elbow against something, what's our first reaction? Our first reaction is to kind of grab it, right?
Yes.
If we hold on to it long enough, less than 90 seconds, probably the pain starts to subside,
That's true.
and then we go on and deal with our day.
Yes.
And so the same thing happens emotionally. We have a reaction to something, and if we allow ourselves to ride the wave of it and stay present to the feeling, now I'm talking about
Hmm.
the emotional side of it, not the physical side of it,
Yes.
then then what we're able to do is to start to make sense and gain meaning from whatever we're going through.
Okay.
And that's part of it. The and for those who start to feel no, it lasts hours or days. So there's a couple caveats to this. If somebody has experienced a trauma,
Hmm.
trauma encodes in the brain differently.
Yes.
So that's going to feel like it lasts longer than 90 seconds. But
Right.
the reality is that what kicks it kicks it forward as if it's going on for hours or weeks or whatever it might be, hours, days, weeks, is that we are more often than not repeating the memory, or we're repeating the thought, or we're repeating the experience. So what it does is it brings everything along with it, including the feelings, and now it starts to feel like it's lasting hours and days as opposed to just the 90 seconds.
We're just keeping
We're
recycling
just recycling it in one way or another, and suppressing it,
it.
trying to suppress the thought does the same thing. It's paradoxical.
Yes.
And what ends up happening is that the more, what to your point, what we resist persists. The more we try to suppress it, you can't not know what you know.
Right. You can't pretend.
And so my thing is, the example is, if I ask you to not think of a zebra that has green and purple stripes.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. You have to think about it to try not to think about
Yes.
it. And
Yes.
so anytime you try to suppress something and go, well, I'm just not going to think about it, you're actually thinking about it that much more.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. You're just pulling it right back up. And that's kind of, I always say, I like affirmations, they're positive, but sometimes, like, just repeating affirmations isn't something that's going to actually change the trajectory of your life, right? It's a lot more than that.
Correct. Yes. Affirmations can help, and it's good to have them in that direction. My bias is that you always want to think, speak, and act in the direction you want your results to be.
Yes.
So that's a good thing, but you have to take action alongside of whatever the thinking is.
Yes. So, you know, riding the wave and engaging with the feelings, the bodily sensations, being present to the emotion itself, that takes something, right? Because I feel like we live in a world where we have become disconnected from our bodies and our bodily sensations. And so how do we guide people to be able to reconnect with that so they can actually get to ride the wave and create the resolution? Because it's so
So
counter to
yeah,
our.
so my thing is, the first thing that one needs to do is to once they realize they're reacting to something, and whatever it is, they're having a reaction.
Yes.
Then the first thing to do is to stop, and to not to stop, but to breathe into it. So it's like, I just got off the phone, and it was a not so great phone call with somebody I'm in conflict with, and now I'm upset, I'm angry, I'm whatever. It's like, notice it. Just don't try to not notice it. Notice it. Be right where you are with whatever you're experiencing, and breathe right into it.
Yes.
And allow your breathing and staying present to what you're experiencing to just kind of to let it ride. Then what you want to do is you want to be able to kind of stop at that point. You want to, I would say, not stop, but pause and see if you can put a name to the feeling. And then see if you can attach the feeling to either the experience or meaning, or what. It's like, okay, what's going on?
Right.
What prompted me to react this way? Then you want to get curious, right? So you're pausing, and now you're getting curious. What prompted me to react this way? What is my reaction tied to? Is there anything similar in my past that I've reacted to like this before? And so now you want to understand what's taking place.
Yes. I
And
love that.
then
Yeah.
once you do that, you start to gain insight.
Yeah, I love that. I always say, whatever your beliefs are, God, the universe, like, if we don't pay attention the first time, it's going to keep coming at us until we actually get whatever it is that lesson is. So let's pay attention while, it's throwing pebbles at us before it throws, the bricks and the boulders.
Totally. Yep.
What I heard you say in that is that the real connection piece, the way you're suggesting reconnecting to your body is through that breath. One of the things we don't do, right? We forget to breathe.
And we stop breathing, actually.
Yeah.
We either stop breathing or we swallow
Mm,
or we tighten up. Those are the three things most common
yes.
that people do to shut down.
Yeah. And it makes sense, right? It's that normal, automatic, kind of shut down. It's a protective response, is what it is. The body's going into that protective mode.
Right, right. And if you notice, people will swallow, for instance, to try to keep feeling at bay.
Mhm.
Look at anybody up on an Olympic medal stand who's trying not to cry.
Yeah.
Right? What they're doing is they're probably swallowing and trying to tighten up so that the feeling stays in the body as opposed to surfacing into tears.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And that's it's like it gets stuck in your throat. Right? So there's some wisdom to that for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Let's talk about the trauma side or the grief side, because you said it's a little bit more complicated when that happens. How do we apply the 90-second reset, when the emotion feels endless or unbearable?
Um, can you give me an example, and then I can address it more specifically?
Yeah, so maybe somebody who's dealing with PTSD,
Okay.
or he has had, a trauma of maybe sexual abuse from their past, where there's so much weight that they're not sure how to engage with those emotions.
Well, first thing, my thing is always start small.
Mhm.
Second thing is to understand that the work was, if you will, what I want to say was not designed to treat PTSD. There's
Mhm.
lots of different protocols for treating PTSD, but while it was not designed for it, it can certainly help with it.
Yes.
And the thing is that um, the first place I start is if people are have kind of a continual looping, because you were using that a little bit earlier,
Yes.
spiraling down a vortex or kind of looping with the same kind of thinking or the same
Mhm.
kind of experience. My thinking is that something feels unresolved.
Mhm.
And the one of the first place to start is to go, all right, what is it that seems unresolved here to me?
Mhm.
And that may be a couple different threads, if you will, and each of those threads is going to lead down to probably a set of experiences or variety of experiences that the person's had.
Yes.
And the key for me, and this is it's actually um, I, I I think it's an important way to work with it, because I call it it's not only grief, it's working with what I call disguised grief.
Mm. Okay.
And
Can you
and
explain?
I'm sorry.
Can you tell us more about what
Yeah,
you mean?
I think of disguised grief as showing up two different ways. One is understanding kind of categories,
Mhm.
and then the other is what I would call it'll show up through grief signal words. So the think of disguised grief as the grief that comes about based on the gap between what you needed, what you desired, what you really wanted, and what you ended up getting.
Mhm. Your expectations and reality.
Yeah, or need in reality.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Okay, not just expectations, but need.
Okay.
Um, and so the categories are the way I think about this is you're grieving over what you got
Mm,
and didn't deserve. That's
mm.
the bad stuff. So that's the chaos, the unpredictability, the abuse, the neglect in any form.
Sure.
Um, it's grieving over what you deserved and didn't get. So think about it as the good stuff:
Mhm.
praise, encouragement for a job well done, support, love, fairness, uh, all those kinds of things, compliments. So it's all the encouraging, praiseworthy things,
Yes.
and then it's grieving over what never was, meaning the opportunities that you didn't have and didn't get realized,
Mm-hmm.
particularly as you grew up. And the next one is grieving over what is not now. So there may be opportunities that are non-existent for you in the present time, and you're also experiencing grief there. And then the last one is grieving over what may never be.
Mm.
And
That is
right? Go ahead.
so many different layers to that, right? Because
Yeah.
there are those layers for just about everything that we might go through or experience.
And I don't think any one of us escapes any of it.
Yeah. And so we're back to that whole thing that you said about bringing awareness. So not just bringing awareness of that, but looking at all the different nuances of that process of those different grieving categories that you just went through.
Right. And then the way you can understand disguised grief is through what I call grief signal words.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody comes in to talk to you and they said, I'm bitter, or I'm resentful,
Yes.
or I'm holding grudges,
Mm.
or I'm pessimistic or cynical.
Yes.
I mean, I could go on with the list. Envious, jealous. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's understanding that everything under that is grief.
Yes.
So then and the way I look at grief is that grief at a minimum, because nobody really defines what comprises grief.
Mm-hmm.
And grief for me is comprised at the minimum of feelings of sadness, helplessness, anger, and disappointment.
Yes. So now we're going back to those emotions too. Yeah. It all comes full circle. It all comes full circle. So, talk to me about, I think we have almost an epidemic of anxiety that's taking place in our world. And I know that you've got it's the anxiety reset, right? That
Yep.
you have in your book. Talk to me a little bit about that, because I am sure that we've got people who are listening who are stuck in a cycle of anxiety.
So complicated. It's so here's the thing. I tend to think of the words fear and anxiety as being overused and misused.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So if you walk with me for a moment, the psychology generally looks at fear as danger in the moment right now.
Yes.
So if you are not in danger in the moment right now and you consistently use the word fear, I'm fearful of, or I'm right, then I would suggest that you're using the wrong word.
Mm-hmm.
And if you use fear, you just activate it within yourself.
Yes.
Right? So choosing words carefully is important because they kind of have their own frequency. And if you choose certain words, you just kind of live at that frequency.
Yes, you do.
So then the next most obvious one to choose would be anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And how does psychology look at anxiety? Psychology looks at anxiety as kind of the diffuse concern, or they would say the diffuse apprehension, diffuse concern about some bad event happening in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense. But here's the catch. If I were to ask, and I've done this many times, if I were to ask 10 people in a room what anxiety meant to them, the most typical response I get is 8 out of 10 at least will express different things.
I'm sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So anxiety as a concept to me is way too vague.
Sure.
So it's of no use to me. And so then what I want to know is, what is somebody really experiencing?
Right.
So anxiety, most typically, the first place to go then is to I don't want people to use the word anxiety either. I don't want you to say I'm anxious about, because people will go, Well, I have, fearful of public speaking. No, you're not fearful of it. Well, I'm anxious about doing it. Well, no, it's not that either.
Yes.
It's actually that you feel vulnerable.
Yes. Yes.
So
Mhm.
what's vulnerability? Vulnerability is the thought, feeling, or sense I could get hurt.
Hey, this is Dr. D. I just wanted to remind you that you can get started on your true wellness journey. Go ahead and check the show notes and grab a link to the True Wellness Checklist. Now, let's get back to the episode. Yeah.
Right? And if somebody gets hurt, which is sort of where we started, what does hurt look like? Sadness, shame, helplessness,
Yes.
anger, right? It looks like one or more of the 8 feelings.
Yeah.
So anxiety for me is either the experience of vulnerability or it's one or more of the other 7 feelings.
Okay. And here we go. We've looped all the way back around again. Yeah.
That's why it's so core.
Yeah, it's beautiful, right? Because when it comes down to it, it's like all these things that seem super duper complicated. Well, maybe it's just if we address the foundation, we can change the foundation without having to overcomplicate things.
Right, which means the better you get at unpleasant feelings, the better you get at life.
There you go. So embrace them.
It's the absolute truth. The better we get at just handling discomfort, the better we get at life.
So I work with a lot of women, right? And one of the things that I find extensively in my practice is the whole self-criticism. I call them little gremlin voices, but there's so much self-criticism that I think some of those negative feelings are actually being generated sometimes by ourselves in our own self-criticism. Can you speak to some of that?
Well, yes. In my world, self-criticism and what I would call harsh self-criticism. So you can call it gremlins, you can call it negative self-talk, you can call it trash talking, you can call it any number of those kinds of things. I think of it as a distraction from unpleasant feelings. It's a distraction from the same 8 unpleasant feelings.
Okay.
So the first thing that I want people to understand is that experiencing unpleasant feelings is not equivalent to harsh self-criticism. They're not equal, and one should never think that they're equal. So if I am experiencing something that's unpleasant emotionally, that's here. I'm sorry, where's my hand go? I'm trying to get my hands
So
here.
it's at a lower level for our.
So this is unpleasant feelings, right? And the moment I start to engage in harsh self-criticism, I might as well go 70 stories in an elevator, zooming down.
Yeah.
Right? So that they're not equivalent, and that the harsh self-criticism is an attempt to control the feeling state.
Okay. So walk me through. Let's say I do something silly, right?
Okay. Yep.
I do something I kind of knew that, maybe if I did it that way, it wasn't going to work out. And then all of a sudden it doesn't work out. And then I'm like, I can't believe you did that. That was so dumb. So how does that interplay into there?
Oh, that's great. So this is perfect because the way out of it is to walk it backwards. So let's go to that's so dumb, and I can give you an example where that happened. But let's say that's so dumb. I was such an idiot. What would be the feeling underneath that you were actually feeling that prompted you to say that was so dumb?
I would assume it's disappointment, right? You're not satisfied with the result.
Okay. So could it be embarrassment?
Yep, that can work. Sure.
Could it be that you were sad that it didn't turn out the way you intended?
Absolutely. It could be a combination of all of them, couldn't it?
Okay. So now you're saying I'm so dumb is your effort to get away from those feelings of sadness, disappointment, and embarrassment.
Okay.
the example that I love to use here is when I was doing an interview similar to this, and the interviewer could not hear me, but I could hear him.
Okay.
Okay, so as a friend of mine, he's on the keyboard trying to figure it out, and he's not figuring it out. Minutes are kind of going by, and then I see him kind of dive down underneath the desk, and you can imagine what he's doing is he's pulling cords, right?
Sure.
It's like, is this one in? Is that one? And I hear him say, while he's underneath the computer, so I can't even see him, but I hear him say, "I'm so stupid. I'm such an idiot."
Uh-huh.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. I missed it. I missed the beat. I apologize. He says, "I'm so embarrassed."
Okay.
Then he said, without missing a beat, "I'm so stupid. I'm such an idiot."
Right there.
So, and this is how fast it happens.
Yes.
So what he was doing, so think of harsh self-criticism or your gremlins
Hmm.
as a thought hijack
Hmm.
of unpleasant feelings.
Yeah.
So he was embarrassed, and he thought hijacked his embarrassment by harsh self-criticism, by saying, "I'm so stupid, I'm such an idiot." And that's what people do across the board.
Okay. And then it becomes a repeat pattern,
That's all
right?
it is. That's all it is.
So, what about? So, we have a lot of women who deal with body issues, right? Where they're not happy with their bodies, the way that their bodies look. And there's a lot of, negative self talk, like not, that comes with maybe not being able to look into the mirror, or I can't believe my body looks this way, or, this is not me, or, all of those different conversations that creep in there. How would you advise those women?
Um, at the at the least, I would say, drop the harsh self-criticism.
Hmm.
I mean, literally stop it. It's more destructive and more damaging than I even have the words to express. And
Wow.
if you'll allow me a moment of crassness,
Yes.
I think of harsh self-criticism as self-mutilation.
Wow. That certainly, I just had a visual flash through my mind, and it's like, oh, that's pretty awful. But actually it is, right? Because it's a mutilation of your own being, of your own soul, of your own
Ex-
worth.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think it's crucial that people stop it.
So
So,
how do they stop
so,
it?
so then if they're going to look in the mirror, then they go, "I'm disappointed where I see my body," or "I'm disappointed at how I see where my body is right now."
Which is very different than you're gross, right?
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. Or "I'm embarrassed. I wish I looked differently."
Yes.
But
Yes.
now there's a little bit of softness and self-compassion.
Hmm.
And hopefully, if it's possible, it can turn into motivation for something else.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So let's talk about that motivation piece. So when we're stuck in the space of I'm gonna go with I'm gross, right? Um, how does that prevent us from being motivated to actually take action?
Well, I'm gross holds us in the negative.
Hmm.
Gross offers us no hope,
Hmm.
right? So, and then the question is, if I'm gross, it means I'm going to have to work horribly against this uphill battle,
Right.
right? So,
So,
and to your point earlier, you were talking about self-affirmations.
hmm.
So even if we flipped it to "I'm embarrassed,"
Hmm.
and then maybe it becomes I'm embarrassed and I can do better.
Right. Or I'm embarrassed and I'm a screw up. So you gotta choose which pathway you're gonna go, right?
And the more negative, the less motivation. The more you create as an opening, the more
Hmm.
there's possibility for change.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to go the direction of, like you said before, like frequency and energy. And the more you're down that negative frequency or energy, it becomes nearly impossible to elevate yourself.
Yeah, you're, like I said, you're struggling uphill.
Yes. Yes. So going along with that, sort of that negative self criticism and things, I know that a lot of our clients deal with emotional eating, right? And I know that's something that you talk about in your book. So give us some insight around that.
That's actually where my work started.
Okay. Yep.
I was working with predominantly women, but some men at the time, who were dealing with a wide variety of eating problems. So
Yes.
anorexia, bulimia, compulsive overeating, and this is where it all started in terms of awareness as opposed to avoidance. What I found is that most people, regardless of the type of um, eating disorder or eating problem they had, they were overly focused on food, weight, or appearance.
Mm-hmm.
Those three.
Okay.
And so um, what I would say is that so food, weight, and appearance became the distractors.
We need to talk about that one. We need to talk about those distractors. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So and this is what I was talking about earlier in terms of the avoidance piece. So
Mm-hmm.
that those were their avoidance pieces.
Yes.
I'd overly focus on the food I'm eating, or the food I want to eat, or the food I shouldn't eat, or what my weight is and the number, and whether it went up an ounce or two, and or my appearance.
Mm-hmm.
It would consistently cut across all three of those.
Yes.
But what I would end up saying to the people who came into the office was that they were focused on food, weight, and appearance when the real problem was their difficulty tolerating thoughts, feelings, needs, or perceptions.
Mm-hmm.
And that they were focused on the wrong set of problems.
Okay.
So that what I would say is it's not that you have an eating disorder, it's that you have an emotional management disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the way I would, so people who are engaged in a lot of emotional eating are managing feeling states
Right.
or difficult thinking,
Right.
things that they don't want to be thinking about,
Yes.
right? Knowing of what I call knowing what you know.
Mm-hmm.
The eating or focus on food, weight, and appearance keeps them trying not to know what they know. It keeps them in avoidance as opposed to in awareness. And
Right.
and so it's just understanding that emotional eating, this idea of emotional eating is using food as a way to manage their emotional state, and they want to get better at handling unpleasant feelings.
Right. So someone finds themselves in a space, say, where um, they've just hung up their phone with their boss and they're completely irate, and they head to the pantry. They're not even thinking, right? It's not even a thought. They just find themselves in the pantry grabbing something and eating, and they're probably perseverating over repeating that conversation over and over again in their head that they had with their boss. So what you're saying is that act right there is distracting them from the underlying physical sensations and emotions that are taking place as a result of that conversation.
Absolutely true. And my thing is, if people can notice the urge to eat
Mm-hmm.
and then delay
Mm-hmm.
a minimum of 20 to 30 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and to either sit and think about what they're experiencing,
Yes.
or sit and think about what they're experiencing and then write about what they're experiencing,
Mm-hmm. Bonus points.
and bonus points, and or do both of those and then call somebody and talk to them about what they're experiencing,
Yes.
and then typically that urge goes away.
Yeah. Pretty powerful, right? Because it is such a thing that I know at least most of the women that we work with, it's something that they struggle with on a real regular basis. And it's not. I always say it's not just lack of willpower. Well, that I'm not a big proponent of willpower as it's used in our society, but it's really about addressing what it is that's happening underneath.
Correct. Absolutely. 100%.
And so when we talk about, like, I always say, weight is our bodies are holding on to stuff. It literally is. It is a protection. It's a protection from the experience of those emotions. So if we're going to release the weight, we've got to actually dive into those emotions to experience it. Do I have that right by you?
Yep. That I would go. Yes.
Yeah.
They need to. It's paying attention to the feelings, and I have a friend that does a lot also with around this idea of emotional eating, and
Yes.
she talks about dropping 50 pounds of weight once she started to deal with the feelings underneath.
Yes. Yes. And it's funny, we've got just to take it out into a little bit of the clinical side, but you talked before about how we swallow our emotions, and we look at the prevalence of thyroid disorders. No accident there, right? No accident there. And we're just swallowing it and keeping it all, and it's having that, that physiological impact on us.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I have a colleague that would talk about looking at thyroid values,
Mm-hmm.
and the people who had difficulty with had thyroid problems tended to also not be people who were speaking up. They
Mm.
would not, they would be holding on to stuff as opposed to speaking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is even well documented in the field of German new medicine, right? Where they've done scans of lesions in people's brains and have tied that emotion, that lack of speaking up, to that internal conflict. It's just really fascinating stuff. So how do we make this a little bit more concrete for our listeners, right? Like, how can they begin to implement this stuff into their lives? What are your, I mean, number one, I want them to read your book, because I think everybody needs to read this book to really understand, because I think the world would be a different place
Thank
if
you.
they did. And so that's why I'm such a strong, proponent of your work. But what should they do to start getting on to this pathway?
Well, thank you first for your belief in what I'm doing and your support for it. The first thing that I would say is that they have to notice where they are in terms of leaning into awareness as opposed to leaning into avoidance. Do they tend to be avoiders? And do
Mhm.
they tend to do things to try to ignore, shut down, distract, or disconnect from their feelings?
Yes.
Then the first thing that I want them to do is to shift and see if they can become people that stay present to what they're dealing with as opposed to
Mhm.
trying to avoid it.
Yes.
That would be the absolute first step. So and use an affirmation. I used to be up until now I was an avoider. Now I'm a person who's into total awareness of what's happening for me.
I
Right.
love that. I know we're running short on time here, but there's one thing I think we must touch on, because we brought it up here. We talked a little bit about it in the beginning, but you said paying attention to the distraction. And I feel like, I mean, this is part of my TEDx talk and all that too. I feel like that is a major issue in our world today. We've got such easy access to mindlessly distract ourselves, and we're conditioned, like scrolling on that cell phone is that dopamine hit after dopamine hit, and it feels good even though we're like in trance.
Right.
How do we break free from distraction?
Well, I think the first thing is notice what you get lost in.
Yeah.
Right. And if there are patterns that behaviors and or patterns of behavior that you can be aware of, that you engage in. So whether it's staying hours on screens,
Hmm.
whether it's staying hours shopping, right, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is just notice what pulls your time and attention, and that's going to start to help you notice whether you're distracting or you're paying attention to what's really going on.
Yeah.
And most people know.
Yes, they do. Even
So
me sometimes. I grab my phone. I'm like, what am I scrolling for? He has a business. You got to be on social media. And then I'm like, wait, what am I still doing here? Get off.
Right. So that would be the first thing. The second would be to, once they're aware that once they've allowed themselves to stay more present in terms of leaning into awareness, or choosing awareness, if you will, as a path, then it's to allow themselves to experience the feeling. So it's understanding that you're going to ride one or more waves of, in this case, bodily sensation waves, in an effort to actually stay present to the feeling. So that's what I want you to do. And the third, I mean, since we've talked about it, there would be other things I would say, but since we talked about it, the third is end harsh self-criticism.
Yes.
Notice, same thing, notice the pattern when you do that. And what you want to do is you want to simply reverse course and to stop and say, what was going on for me right before I started to beat myself up. And I want to go back to whatever those feelings were, because that's where the essence is. And same thing, then pause, try to get a sense of what it's connected to and what it means to you that you're doing that.
Yeah, I love that. I know for me personally, there are times when I'll find myself I'm just not myself. I'm like, what is that? And I've got to go back and be like, okay, what happened? Where did I stop? What is it that occurred that kind of threw me off kilter, and have to start to process through what happened, why it happened, what maybe I was feeling that I kind of disregarded in that moment. So
right.
Awesome. Dr. Rosenberg, I'm blessed to have you here sharing all of your wisdom with us today. Share with us a little bit how people can find out more about your work. We'll have all your links in the show notes, so everyone can go to the show notes and click on them. But in case someone doesn't have access, can you share with us how they can find you, how they can learn more about your work? And of course, everyone needs to grab a copy of 90 Seconds to a Life You Love.
They can go to my website, drjoanrosenberg.com. It needs a couple updating elements to it. So what I would say is, if you want to contact me, actually DM me through Instagram.
Perfect.
Also Dr. Joan Rosenberg. Most of the handles everywhere, whether it's LinkedIn or the others, is Dr. Joan Rosenberg. And that's probably the easiest way to contact me. Anything else I should be adding in there?
We'll get everything in the show notes so everyone can go ahead and get it. But thank you for the work that you do, for the difference that you make, and for the contribution that you're making to people's lives. How awesome is it that we could just spend, the last almost hour here together, and people can walk away with a completely new perspective and opportunity for joy and happiness. So thank you for making that possible.
And thank you for making it possible to expand the knowledge and expand the opportunity for everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is Dr. D, reminding you to tune into your body, connect with what matters, and embrace the journey to true wellness. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to redefine their health. Be sure to grab a copy of the True Wellness Checklist right in the show notes. Let's keep redefining wellness and empowering change together. See you for the next episode.